Rain hammered against the windows of Millfield Dental Clinic like angry fists. Dr. Linda Hayes finished cleaning her instruments and glanced at the clock. 8:30 in the evening, and she was finally done with her last patient of the day. Mrs. Peterson's root canal had taken longer than expected, but at least the elderly woman would sleep peacefully tonight. Linda pulled off her latex gloves and tossed them into the waste bin. 20 years of running this small practice had taught her to appreciate the quiet moments. Millfield wasn't exactly a bustling metropolis. Most days brought farmers with chipped teeth from bar fights, children with cavities from too much candy, and seniors needing dentures. It was honest work, but hardly exciting. She was reaching for her coat when something massive slammed into the parking lot behind her clinic. The entire building shook. Picture frames rattled on the walls, and her dental chair creaked ominously. Linda froze, heart pounding. That hadn't sounded like a car accident. It was too loud, too heavy, like a boulder falling from the sky. Thunder rolled overhead, but this was different. This was wrong. Linda grabbed a flashlight from her emergency kit and peered through the back window. Rain blurred her vision, but she could make out a large, dark shape sprawled across the asphalt where she usually parked her Honda. Steam rose from whatever it was, creating ghostly wisps in the storm. Common sense told her to call 911 and stay inside, but something about the shape bothered her. It wasn't moving like debris. It was moving like something alive and hurt. She unlocked the back door and stepped into the rain. Water soaked through her scrubs immediately, but she kept walking toward the shape. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing something that made her brain struggle to process what she was seeing. It looked like a man, but wrong in every way. He was enormous, at least 7 feet tall, with broad shoulders and arms that seemed too long for his body. His skin had an odd shimmer to it, like scales catching light. Dark hair clung to his head, and when he turned toward her flashlight, his eyes reflected the beam like an animal's. But it was his face that made Linda's breath catch. His jaw was swollen on the left side, grotesquely distorted. Even in the rain, she could see the pain written across his features. He was clutching his face with one oversized hand, and when he opened his mouth to speak, she glimpsed teeth that were definitely not human. "Please," he gasped, his voice rough and strange. "Help me, it's been weeks." The pain won't stop. Linda should have run, should have screamed, should have done anything except what she actually did, which was step closer and ask, "What happened to your face?" "Infected tooth," he managed between ragged breaths. "I know how this looks. I know what I am. But I'm dying, and you're the only dentist within 50 miles. Linda stared at him. His words made no sense, but his pain was real. She'd seen enough dental emergencies to recognize the signs of serious infection. The swelling, the fever, the way he held his head. If a normal patient came to her in this condition, she'd send them straight to the hospital. "What are you?" she heard herself ask. He looked up at her with those impossible eyes. "Prince Aldrich of the Crimson Veil. And before you ask, yes, I'm exactly what you think I am." As if to prove his point, he exhaled, and Linda saw a small puff of smoke escape his lips despite the rain. A dragon. She was standing in a parking lot in the middle of a thunderstorm, talking to a dragon who needed dental work. Linda had always prided herself on being practical. When her husband left her for his secretary 10 years ago, she'd cried for exactly 1 day, then filed for divorce and built her practice into something that could support her independently. When the town's only hospital closed, she'd learned to handle more serious dental emergencies herself rather than send patients to the city. But this was beyond practical. This was insane. "Dragons aren't real," she said weakly. Aldrich tried to smile, but the expression turned into a grimace. "We've been hiding among you for centuries. Most of us can take human form, though we're not very good at making ourselves small. I've been living here for months, working security at the factory outside town." That explained why she'd never seen him before. The night shift at Peterson Manufacturing kept to themselves. "The infection started 3 weeks ago," Aldrich continued. "One of my back molars. I tried to ignore it, but dragon teeth are different from yours. Harder. When they get infected, the poison spreads faster." Linda found herself studying his swollen jaw with professional interest. The infection had clearly spread to the surrounding tissue. In a human patient, this would be life-threatening. "Why didn't you go to a hospital?" "Because when I'm in pain, I can't control my transformation completely." "Look at my hands." Linda looked. His fingernails were actually claws, dark and curved. As she watched, they flickered between human nails and something decidedly reptilian. The fever makes it worse, he explained. If I went to a human hospital, I'd end up revealing what I am. My people have rules about that. Strict rules. Rain continued to pour down on both of them. Linda realized she was standing in a puddle, her scrubs soaked through, having a conversation with a mythical creature about dental hygiene. If anyone saw her now, they'd have her committed. But Aldrich's pain was real. His desperation was real. And despite everything her rational mind was screaming, Linda believed him. "Can you walk?" she asked. Hope flickered in his strange eyes. "Yes, then come inside. Let me take a look." She led him through the back door of her clinic, leaving wet footprints on the linoleum. Aldrich had to duck to fit through the doorway, and he moved carefully as if his whole body hurt. "Sit in the chair," Linda instructed, pointing to her dental chair, "and try not to break it. It's the only one I have." Aldrich settled into the chair with obvious relief. Up close, under the bright dental lights, Linda could see just how wrong everything about him was. His teeth were definitely not human, for starters. They were whiter, sharper, and there were more of them than there should be. She washed her hands and pulled on fresh gloves, trying to think of this as just another emergency patient. Except emergency patients didn't usually have smoke curling from their nostrils when they breathed. "Open your mouth," she said, reaching for her instruments. And that was how Dr. Linda Hayes became the first human dentist to treat a dragon prince, setting in motion events that would change both their worlds forever. Linda stared into Aldrich's mouth and tried not to panic. She'd been a dentist for 20 years, but nothing in dental school had prepared her for this. Dragon teeth were unlike anything she'd ever seen. They were larger than human teeth, with an almost crystalline structure that caught the light. Some were pointed like a predator's, while others were flat for grinding. And there were definitely more than 32 of them. The infected molar was easy to spot. The gum around it was angry red and swollen, with visible pus, but the tooth itself was the problem. It wasn't just infected, it was cracked down the middle, and the crack was oozing something that definitely wasn't blood. The liquid was dark and seemed to shimmer. "This is going to be complicated," Linda muttered, reaching for her probe. The moment the metal instrument touched the infected tooth, Aldrich's entire body went rigid. His hands gripped the armrests of the dental chair so hard that Linda heard the metal creak. Worse, his fingernails had definitely become claws, leaving gouges in the padding. "Sorry," he gasped. Pain makes it hard to control the transformation. Linda pulled back and considered her options. Normal Novocaine probably wouldn't work on dragon physiology, and she wasn't even sure how to dose anesthetic for someone his size. But she had to do something. The infection was clearly spreading, and from the fever radiating off his skin, she guessed he didn't have much time. "I'm going to try local anesthetic," she said, "but I don't know how it will affect you." "Anything," Aldrich pleaded. "I haven't slept in 3 days." Linda prepared the largest dose she dared, then carefully injected it around the infected area. Aldrich's reaction was immediate. His eyes rolled back, and for a terrifying moment she thought she'd poisoned him. Then he let out a long, shuddering breath. "Better?" she asked. "Much." His voice was clearer now, less strained. "I can think again." With the immediate pain reduced, Linda could work more carefully. The infected tooth was definitely beyond saving. The crack went all the way to the root, and the surrounding bone showed signs of damage. She'd have to extract it completely and clean out the infection. "This is going to take several sessions," she explained. "I need to drain the infection first, then remove the tooth, then make sure the site heals properly. Dragon teeth might be different, but infected bone is infected bone." Aldrich nodded. "How long?" "If you were human, I'd say 2 weeks minimum." "For you?" Linda shrugged. "I honestly don't know." She started with drainage, carefully removing the infected material. The dark liquid that came out was unlike anything she'd seen. It was thick and seemed to move on its own, and when it hit the collection tray, it actually hissed. "That's the curse," Aldrich said, noticing her expression. "Curse? This wasn't an accident. 3 months ago, I was supposed to marry Princess Vera of the Northern Mountains. It was arranged by our parents to unite our clans. I refused." Linda paused in her work. "You refused to marry a princess?" "I didn't love her. More importantly, she didn't love me. She was in love with her guard captain, and I could see how miserable the arrangement made her, so I called off the wedding." "That was decent of you." Aldrich's laugh was bitter. Her family didn't think so. They saw it as an insult to their honor. "One of her brothers challenged me to combat with cursed blades. When he cut me, the curse was supposed to kill me slowly and painfully. But it just infected your tooth. Dragon magic is unpredictable. Instead of killing me outright, the curse focused on my weakest point. I'd chipped that tooth in a fight years ago and never had it properly treated. Linda continued working, processing this information. She was apparently treating a patient who'd been magically poisoned by his ex-fiance's family. Just another Tuesday in Millfield. After an hour of careful work, she'd drained most of the infection and started the extraction. Dragon teeth were incredibly hard, requiring tools she'd never used for this purpose. Her diamond-tipped drill bits meant for cutting crowns barely made a dent. "I'm going to need stronger equipment," she admitted. "I might be able to help with that." Aldrich raised one hand, and Linda watched in fascination as his fingernails shifted into proper claws. Dragon claws can cut through almost anything. "You want to perform surgery on yourself?" "Just the initial cuts. You guide me." It was the most surreal experience of Linda's career. She directed Aldrich as he carefully used his own claws to section the infected tooth, following her instructions to avoid nerve damage. His control was impressive, and within an hour they'd removed the entire tooth and most of the infected tissue. "That should do it for tonight," Linda said, cleaning the surgical site. "But you'll need to come back tomorrow and probably several times after that." Aldrich sat up slowly, testing his jaw. "The pain is almost gone. Don't get too excited. You'll need antibiotics, and I'm not sure what works on dragons. Actually, I might have something for that." Aldrich reached into his jacket and pulled out a small vial of silver liquid. "Dragon medicine. It should prevent secondary infection." Linda watched him drink the contents of the vial. "You carry dragon medicine around?" "I've been hiding among humans for months. I learned to be prepared." As Aldrich prepared to leave, Linda realized she was exhausted. The adrenaline of the evening was wearing off, leaving her with the surreal knowledge that she'd just performed surgery on a dragon prince. "Where are you staying?" she asked. "I have a small apartment above the old bookstore on Main Street. Mrs. Chen rents it cheap because I work nights." Linda nodded. "Come back tomorrow evening, same time. We need to monitor the healing and probably do more cleaning." Aldrich paused at the door. "Why are you helping me?" The question caught Linda off guard. She thought about it for a moment. "Because you're in pain and I'm a dentist. It's what I do, even for dragons." Linda smiled. "Apparently especially for dragons." After Aldrich left, Linda spent an hour cleaning her instruments and sterilizing everything he'd touched. She told herself she was being cautious, but really she was trying to process what had happened. Dragons were real. One of them had just been sitting in her dental chair, and she'd agreed to continue treating him. She was either having a breakdown or embarking on the strangest chapter of her life. As she locked up the clinic, Linda noticed the box of glazed donuts she kept for anxious patients was sitting on the counter. Mrs. Peterson had been too nervous to eat one earlier, so the box was still full. Tomorrow, she decided she'd offer one to Aldrich. If he was going to be a regular patient, she might as well treat him like one. Besides, she was curious to see if dragons had a sweet tooth. It was a small gesture, but it felt like the beginning of something important. Linda arrived at her clinic the next evening with fresh donuts and a dozen questions. She'd spent the entire day trying to convince herself that last night had been a stress-induced hallucination. But the claw marks in her dental chair's armrests were very real, and so was the strange residue she'd had to scrub from her instruments. Aldrich knocked on the back door at exactly 8:30, just as they'd agreed. When Linda let him in, she was struck by how much better he looked. The swelling in his face had gone down significantly, and his movements seemed less pained. "How are you feeling?" she asked, settling him into the dental chair. "Like I've been sleeping for the first time in weeks," Aldrich replied. "That silver medicine works fast on dragon physiology." Linda examined the extraction site and was amazed at what she found. The healing was far more advanced than should have been possible in just 24 hours. New tissue was already forming, and there was no sign of remaining infection. "This is incredible," she murmured. "In humans, this would take at least a week to look this good." "Dragons heal faster than humans," Aldrich explained. "It's one of the advantages of our nature, though apparently our teeth are more susceptible to magical curses." Linda cleaned the site carefully and applied fresh dressing. The procedure took only 30 minutes instead of the hour she'd expected. "I think we can reduce these visits to every other day," she said. "You're healing remarkably well." As she cleaned her instruments, Linda remembered the donuts. "Would you like something sweet?" I keep these for nervous patients. She offered him the box, expecting polite refusal. Instead, Aldrich's eyes widened like a child seeing Christmas morning. What are these? He asked, lifting one of the glazed donuts with surprising reverence. Donuts, fried dough with sugar glaze. Linda watched his expression with growing amusement. Haven't you had them before? I've been avoiding most human foods. Dragon digestion is different, and I wasn't sure what was safe. Aldrich took a careful bite, and his entire face transformed. His eyes actually rolled back in bliss, and he made a sound that was somewhere between a purr and a sigh. This is incredible, he breathed. It's like sunshine made edible. Linda burst out laughing. It's just a donut. No, Aldrich said seriously, taking another bite. This is amazing. The sweetness, the texture, the way it dissolves on the tongue. Do all humans eat like this? The good ones do, Linda grinned. There's a donut shop downtown if you want to try other varieties. Aldrich's expression became almost worshipful. There's an entire shop dedicated to these? Oh, you sweet summer child, Linda said. You have no idea what you've been missing. The next evening, their appointment turned into an impromptu food tour. After checking Aldrich's healing progress, Linda walked him downtown to Miller's Donuts, a family-owned shop that had been serving Millfield for 40 years. Old Pete Miller looked up from his display case as they entered. Evening, Doc Hayes. Who's your friend? This is Aldrich, Linda said. He's new in town and has never had a proper donut. Pete's eyebrows shot up. Never had a proper donut? Son, you're in for a treat. What followed was the most entertaining half-hour of Linda's recent memory. Pete guided Aldrich through his selection like a sommelier discussing wine. Boston cream, jelly-filled, chocolate-glazed, old-fashioned, bear claws, apple fritters. Aldrich approached each one with scientific curiosity and genuine appreciation. The jelly-filled ones are interesting, he told Linda between bites. The contrast between the soft dough and the fruit filling creates a complex flavor profile. You're analyzing donuts, Linda observed. Everything about human culture fascinates me, Aldrich admitted. Dragons have very simple food, mostly meat, some fruits. We don't really do art with our nutrition. Pete beamed with pride. Art, he says. I like this fellow. They established a routine over the following week. Aldrich would come for his appointments, which were healing so well they barely needed medical attention anymore. Then they'd walk to Miller's Donuts for what Aldrich called his cultural education. Sometimes they'd sit at the small cafe tables, and Aldrich would tell Linda about Dragon Society while she explained human customs. We're very hierarchical, Aldrich explained one evening over chocolate cake donuts. Everything is about bloodlines and ancient treaties. My father is the Dragon King of the Crimson Vale, which means I was supposed to marry for political advantage. That sounds lonely, Linda said. It is. Dragons live for centuries, so arranged marriages are treated like business contracts. Love is considered impractical. Linda sipped her coffee and studied Aldrich's face. Is that why you refused the marriage? Partly, but also because I'd been living among humans for months by then. I'd seen couples who actually chose each other, who laughed together, who seemed genuinely happy. I wanted that possibility for myself and for Princess Vera. Your parents must have been furious. Aldrich's laugh was rueful. That's an understatement. My father disowned me, told me I was no longer welcome in the Crimson Vale unless I came to my senses and honored the marriage. Contract, so you've been in exile, working night security at a factory, and learning that humans make the most incredible food I've ever tasted. Aldrich held up his donut. This is better than dragon treasure. Speaking of which, Linda said, I have to ask. Do you actually hoard treasure? Some dragons do. It's more of a cultural stereotype than a biological imperative. I prefer books. Books? I have a small collection of human literature. Your storytelling is remarkable. Dragons tend to focus on historical accounts and technical manuals. We don't really do fiction. Linda found herself genuinely enjoying these conversations. Aldrich was intelligent, curious, and surprisingly funny once he relaxed. He was also completely fascinated by human behavior in a way that made Linda see her own world through fresh eyes. But she noticed other things too. The way he always sat facing the door, how he tensed whenever anyone entered the donut shop, the careful way he monitored his hands to keep them looking human. Are you in danger? She asked one evening. Aldrich hesitated. Probably. Dragons don't usually stay in the human world this long. Eventually, someone will come looking for me. What happens then? Depends on who finds me first. My father's agents would try to drag me home, Princess Vera's family. Aldrich touched his jaw where the infection had been. They might try to finish what they started. Linda felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. How long do you think you have? I don't know. I've been careful to stay hidden, but the longer I remain missing, the more attention it draws. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over Millfield's quiet streets. Linda realized she'd become genuinely fond of Aldrich in just a week. He was kind, thoughtful, and had a childlike wonder about simple human pleasures that was endearing. More than that, he was the most interesting thing that had happened to her in years. Well, she said finally, until someone comes looking for you, you're welcome at my clinic anytime. And Miller's Donuts. Aldrich smiled, and for a moment Linda forgot he wasn't human. Thank you, Linda, for everything. Don't mention it. Besides, Pete would never forgive me if I let his best customer disappear. Neither of them knew that their quiet routine was about to be shattered. 3 realms away, dragon assassins were already preparing for the hunt. Linda was reorganizing her supply closet when the temperature in her clinic suddenly dropped 20 degrees. She looked up from her inventory sheets, confused. The air conditioning wasn't even running. It was a warm Thursday evening in late September, and she'd been looking forward to another donut expedition with Aldrich after his final checkup. Then she heard the sound. It was like wind, but wrong. Too rhythmic, too powerful. Like massive wings beating against the air. Aldrich was in the dental chair, having his extraction site examined one last time. The healing was complete, leaving only a small scar where the infected tooth had been. Linda had been preparing to officially discharge him as a patient, though she hoped they'd continue their evening donut tradition. Something's wrong, Aldrich said suddenly, sitting up straight in the chair. His nostrils flared, and Linda saw his fingernails beginning to elongate into claws. What is it? Dragons. At least 3 of them. They found me. Before Linda could respond, something massive landed on the roof of her clinic. The entire building shook, and dust rained down from the ceiling tiles. Then another impact and another. Her instruments rattled on their trays, and the overhead light swayed ominously. Get behind the desk, Aldrich ordered, his voice changing, becoming deeper and more commanding. Whatever happened, stay down. Linda didn't argue. She grabbed her emergency kit and crouched behind her reception desk, peering around the edge to watch Aldrich. His transformation was already beginning. His human disguise was falling away like a shed skin. His frame expanded, muscles bulging beneath clothes that were suddenly too small. His face elongated, becoming more reptilian, and when he opened his mouth, Linda saw rows of sharp teeth. The front windows of her clinic exploded inward. 3 figures in human form dropped through the broken glass, but Linda could tell immediately they weren't really human any more than Aldrich was. They moved wrong, too fast and too fluid. Their eyes reflected the clinic's fluorescent lights like mirrors. And when they smiled, their teeth were as sharp as Aldrich's. Prince Aldrich, the largest one said, his voice carrying an odd accent. You've led us quite a chase. Marcus, Aldrich replied, and Linda heard the recognition in his voice. I should have known Princess Vera's family would send you. Marcus was tall and lean, with pale skin and dark hair. He wore an expensive suit that looked out of place in Linda's small-town clinic. The 2 dragons flanking him were smaller but no less dangerous looking. You insulted our family's honor, Marcus continued, stepping carefully around the broken glass. Did you think there would be no consequences? I saved your sister from a loveless marriage, Aldrich shot back. She should thank me. She cried for weeks. Our parents were humiliated before the entire dragon court. And you. Marcus's eyes swept the clinic with disgust. You ran away to hide among these pathetic creatures. Linda felt a spike of anger at being called pathetic, but she stayed hidden. This was clearly dragon business, and she was very obviously out of her depth. I'm not hiding, Aldrich said. I'm living. Something you might try sometime. Marcus laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. Living, working night shifts at a human factory? Eating their garbage food? You've disgraced yourself, Prince. Father wants you to return home and fulfill your obligations. I'm not going back. Yes, Marcus said softly. You are. He moved faster than Linda's eyes could follow. One moment he was standing by the window. The next he was grappling with Aldrich in the middle of her clinic. The 2 dragons crashed into her equipment, sending her expensive dental chair spinning across the room. But Aldrich was still mostly in human form, trying to protect Linda's clinic. Marcus had no such restraint. His transformation was immediate and violent. His clothes shredded as his body expanded, scales erupting across his skin. His face became fully draconic with an elongated snout full of razor teeth. "Transform and fight me properly," Marcus snarled, his voice now an inhuman growl. "Not here," Aldrich gasped, dodging a swipe from claws that could have disemboweled him. "There are innocent people nearby. Then you'll die like the coward you've become." Marcus grabbed Aldrich by the throat and hurled him across the clinic. Aldrich crashed through the wall separating the main office from Linda's break room, leaving a human-shaped hole in the drywall. Linda realized she had to do something. Her clinic was being destroyed, and Aldrich was trying to protect her while fighting for his life. She grabbed the fire extinguisher from under her desk and aimed it at Marcus. "Hey, ugly," she shouted, pulling the pin. Marcus turned toward her just as she triggered the extinguisher. White foam exploded across his face and chest, blinding him temporarily. He roared in rage and confusion, clawing at his eyes. Aldrich used the distraction to launch himself at Marcus, but the other two dragons were already moving. One of them, a female with red hair, intercepted Aldrich mid-leap. The other, a stocky male with scarred hands, turned toward Linda. The human helped him. The scarred dragon said, "She's involved now. No!" Aldrich's shout was desperate. "She's innocent. She just treated my tooth." But it was too late for explanations. The scarred dragon was advancing on Linda, his hands shifting into claws. Linda backed away, still clutching the empty fire extinguisher. But there was nowhere to go. That's when Aldrich finally stopped holding back. His transformation was nothing like the gradual change Linda had witnessed before. This was explosive, instantaneous, and terrifying. His human form simply burst apart, replaced by something enormous and magnificent and completely inhuman. Aldrich in his true dragon form barely fit inside the clinic. His head scraped the ceiling and his wings, even folded, pressed against the walls. His scales were deep crimson with gold edges and they seemed to glow with inner fire. When he opened his mouth, Linda saw flames building in his throat. "Leave. Her. Alone." His voice shook the building. The scarred dragon stopped advancing on Linda and stepped back, suddenly uncertain. Marcus, wiping foam from his eyes, laughed. "There's the prince we remember. But you're trapped in here with us, Aldrich. Transform in this small space and you'll kill the human yourself." Aldrich's massive head turned toward Linda, and she saw the anguish in his inhuman eyes. Marcus was right. In his true form, Aldrich was too large for the clinic. One wrong move and he'd crush her accidentally. "The choice is yours, Prince," Marcus continued. "Surrender and come home or watch us tear this place apart around your pet human." Linda realized the trap they were in. Aldrich couldn't fight effectively without destroying the clinic and potentially killing her. But if he surrendered, Marcus would probably kill him anyway. She made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. "Aldrich," she called out clearly, "burn the whole place down." "Linda." "No," Aldrich protested. "It's just a building," she said firmly. "I have insurance. But I don't have another friend like you." Something shifted in Aldrich's enormous features. Determination replaced anguish. He looked back at Marcus and the other dragons. "You heard her," he said, and Linda saw flames begin to build in his throat again. "Last chance to leave." Marcus's confident expression faltered. He'd counted on Aldrich's reluctance to cause collateral damage. He hadn't counted on Linda's willingness to sacrifice her life's work. "This isn't over," Marcus snarled, but he was already backing toward the broken windows. "The king will hear about this human, about what you've become." "Tell him," Aldrich replied. "Tell him I found something worth fighting for." The three dragons retreated, but Linda knew it wasn't really a victory. They'd be back, probably with reinforcements. And now she was involved whether she wanted to be or not. As Aldrich carefully transformed back to human form, Linda looked around her destroyed clinic and tried not to cry. 20 years of building her practice gone in 10 minutes, I'm sorry, Aldrich said quietly. "This is my fault." Linda picked up a broken picture frame from the floor. It held her dental school diploma. "No," she said. "This is what happens when you try to control people who don't want to be controlled." She looked at Aldrich, standing amidst the wreckage in his torn clothes, looking lost and guilty. "The question is," she continued, "what do we do now?" Linda spent 3 hours on the phone with her insurance company, explaining that her clinic had been damaged in a freak windstorm that had blown out her windows and destroyed most of her equipment. The adjuster would come by Monday to assess the damage. She didn't mention the claw marks on the walls or the human-shaped hole leading to her break room. Aldrich waited in her apartment above the clinic, pacing like a caged animal. When Linda finally hung up the phone, she found him staring out her kitchen window toward the mountains. "They'll be back," he said, without turning around. "Marcus won't give up easily, and now they know I'm not alone. So what are our options?" Linda asked, opening her refrigerator and pulling out leftover Chinese takeout. It was past midnight, and stress eating seemed like a reasonable response to the evening's events. "Our options?" Aldrich turned to face her. "Linda, you don't have options. You need to leave Millfield tonight. Go stay with family in another state until this is over." Linda took a bite of cold lo mein and considered this. "What family? My parents are dead, I'm divorced, and I don't have kids. This clinic was my whole life. Then go somewhere else. Start over. I'll give you money." "With what?" Linda interrupted. "You work night security for minimum wage." Aldrich looked uncomfortable. "I have resources. Dragon princes don't carry human currency, but I have things I could sell." "You mean treasure?" "A few small items I brought with me when I left home." Linda studied his face. "You're planning to go back, aren't you? To the Dragon Realm?" Aldrich nodded reluctantly. "It's the only way to end this. If I stay here, they'll keep coming. Eventually someone innocent will get hurt." "Someone innocent already got hurt," Linda pointed out. "My dental chair didn't deserve to die like that." Despite everything, Aldrich smiled. "I'll buy you a new dental chair." "With treasure money?" "With treasure money." Linda ate more lo mein and thought about her situation. Her clinic was destroyed. Her quiet life in Millfield was over, whether she liked it or not. She could run away and hope the dragons left her alone, or she could do something completely insane. "I'm coming with you," she announced. Aldrich nearly choked on the glass of water he'd been drinking. "Absolutely not. Why not?" "You said dragons need dental care too, right? Maybe I could be useful." "Linda, the Dragon Realm isn't some magical vacation destination. It's dangerous. There are political factions that would kill you just for being human. As opposed to staying here where your ex-fiance's family wants to kill me for helping you." Aldrich opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. Linda had a point. Besides, she continued, "I'm curious. 20 years of routine cleanings and root canals gets boring. This is the most interesting thing that's ever happened to me. You could die. I could die crossing the street. At least this way it would be memorable." Aldrich stared at her for a long moment. "You're serious? Dead serious. When do we leave?" "The portal to the Dragon Realm is in the mountains, about 50 miles north of here. We'd need to travel at night to avoid being seen." Aldrich paused. "If we left tomorrow night, we could reach it by dawn." "Then we leave tomorrow night." "Linda, you don't understand what you're agreeing to. Dragon society is nothing like human culture. Everything is about honor and hierarchy and ancient grudges. One wrong word could start a war." "Then you'll have to teach me," Linda said simply. "I'm a quick learner." Aldrich looked at her with something that might have been admiration. "You're either very brave or very foolish. Probably both." They spent the next day preparing for the journey. Linda packed her essential dental equipment into a large backpack, along with clothes and supplies. Aldrich provided her with what he called dragon gold, 3 small coins that he assured her would be worth a fortune in any human currency. "Emergency funds," he explained. "In case you need to get home quickly." "You keep talking like this is a one-way trip for you," Linda observed. Aldrich didn't respond, but his expression said everything. That evening, they loaded Linda's car with their supplies and a suitcase full of donuts from Miller's Donuts. Pete had insisted on contributing to what Linda had described as a business trip, and Aldrich had been unable to explain why donuts wouldn't be necessary. "Cultural exchange," Linda had told Pete. "Aldrich wants to introduce his family to American pastry." The drive into the mountains was quiet. Linda navigated winding roads she'd never traveled before, following Aldrich's directions. The further they went from civilization, the more nervous she became. She was leaving everything she'd ever known to travel to another dimension with a dragon prince. When she put it like that, it sounded completely insane. "Having second thoughts?" Aldrich asked, as if reading her mind. "Third and fourth thoughts," Linda admitted. "But I'm still going." The portal was located in a cave hidden behind a waterfall. Linda had to park her car 2 miles away and hike through dense forest to reach it. The cave entrance was narrow and would have been invisible if Aldrich hadn't known exactly where to look. Inside, The cave opened into a vast chamber filled with strange crystalline formations. They pulsed with soft blue light, creating an otherworldly atmosphere that made Linda's skin tingle. Dragon magic, Aldrich explained. This portal has been here for thousands of years. At the center of the chamber was an archway made of black stone covered in carved symbols. The space within the arch shimmered like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Once we go through, Aldrich warned, there's no immediate way back. The portal only opens from this side once every lunar cycle. How long is that in dragon time? About 3 human weeks. Linda took a deep breath and shouldered her backpack. Then we better make it count. Aldrich stepped through the portal first, and Linda watched him disappear into the shimmer. For a moment she stood alone in the cave, surrounded by alien light and the sound of her own heartbeat. Then, she followed him into the unknown. The sensation of traveling through the portal was like being turned inside out and spun in a washing machine. Linda's vision went white, her stomach lurched, and for a terrifying moment she couldn't tell which way was up. Then her feet hit solid ground, and she found herself standing in what looked like a fairy tale. The Dragon Realm was a landscape of floating crystal cities connected by bridges of light. The sky was purple instead of blue, and 2 moons hung overhead even though it was clearly daytime. In the distance, Linda could see dragons in their true form soaring between the crystal spires, their wings catching the strange sunlight. "Welcome to the Crimson Vale," Aldrich said beside her. "My father's kingdom." Linda stared at the impossible vista, her dental equipment suddenly feeling very small and inadequate. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "It's also very dangerous," Aldrich reminded her. "Stay close to me and remember, you're the first human to enter this realm in over 1,000 years. Everyone we meet will be watching you." As if summoned by his words, a group of dragon guards in human form appeared at the portal platform. Their leader, a stern-faced woman with silver hair, approached with obvious suspicion. "Prince Aldrich," she said formally, "your father wishes to see you immediately." "And your companion?" Linda straightened her shoulders and tried to look like someone who belonged in a magical kingdom. She had a feeling the real adventure was just beginning. The Dragon King's palace was carved from a single massive crystal that rose from the center of the floating city like a mountain of frozen fire. Linda craned her neck as they approached, trying to take in the impossible architecture. Bridges of solidified light connected different levels of the structure, and dragons in both human and true form moved along them with casual grace. "Try not to stare," Aldrich murmured as they climbed the main steps. Dragons considered direct eye contact a challenge. "How am I supposed to not stare?" Linda whispered back. "This is the most incredible thing I've ever seen." The throne room was even more overwhelming. The ceiling disappeared into shadows high above, and the walls were covered in murals that seemed to move when Linda wasn't looking directly at them. The Dragon King sat on a throne made of black stone and gold, and even in human form, his presence filled the enormous space. King Stefan looked like an older version of Aldrich, but where his son had warmth in his eyes, the king's gaze was cold as winter steel. Linda noticed immediately that he was holding his jaw strangely, favoring one side. "Aldrich," the king's voice echoed in the vast chamber. "You return home with interesting company." "Father," Aldrich bowed formally. "This is Dr. Linda Hayes. She saved my life." The king's eyes fixed on Linda, and she felt like a mouse being studied by a hawk. "A human healer. How quaint." Before Linda could respond, another voice cut through the chamber. "Your Majesty, the human's presence here is an outrage." Linda turned to see Marcus striding into the throne room, flanked by several other dragons. His expensive suit had been replaced by elaborate robes that marked him as nobility. "Lord Marcus," the king acknowledged. "You have something to report?" "Prince Aldrich has been living among humans for months, dishonoring our people and corrupting himself with their inferior culture. When we tried to bring him home, he chose to protect this creature over his own kind. I chose to protect an innocent person," Aldrich corrected firmly. "Something you wouldn't understand." Marcus's face flushed with anger. "You destroyed property, revealed our nature to humans, and brought shame to the crown. This woman is a witness to our secrets. She should be eliminated." "Enough," the king said, though Linda noticed he winced as he spoke. "The human will be dealt with appropriately. But first we have more pressing matters." The king gestured to a side chamber. "Aldrich, attend me. Alone." As father and son disappeared through an ornate doorway, Linda found herself standing in the throne room surrounded by dragons who clearly considered her a problem to be solved. The smart thing would have been to keep quiet and hope for the best. Instead, she stepped forward and addressed Marcus directly. "Excuse me," she said politely. "I couldn't help but notice that His Majesty seems to be in pain. I'm a dentist and I recognize the signs of dental distress." The throne room went dead silent. Marcus stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You dare to suggest that our king requires assistance?" he said slowly. "I'm suggesting that he might have a tooth problem," Linda replied calmly. "Dragon teeth are susceptible to infection, and from what I can see, the king is showing classic symptoms." Before Marcus could respond, raised voices came from the side chamber. Even through the stone walls, Linda could hear the argument between Aldrich and his father. "Not coming back." Aldrich's voice was clear, even muffled by stone. "You are my son and heir." The king's reply was equally loud. "Then find another heir." The argument continued for several minutes before Aldrich emerged from the chamber alone, his face grim. The king followed a moment later, moving carefully and still favoring his jaw. "Aldrich has made his position clear," the king announced to the assembled court. "He renounces his claim to the throne and chooses exile among the humans." Gasps echoed through the chamber. "Marcus looked like he'd been slapped, Your Majesty," Linda said, stepping forward again. "Before you make any final decisions, might I examine your mouth? I believe you have an infected tooth that's affecting your judgment." The second silence was even more profound than the first. Linda was pretty sure she could have heard a pin drop in the enormous chamber. "You think," the king said very slowly, "that a dental infection is affecting my judgment?" "I think," Linda replied carefully, "that severe pain can make anyone irritable and less likely to think clearly. Dental infections can also cause fever, which definitely impairs decision-making." King Stefan studied her for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he began to laugh. "In 800 years of ruling," he said, "no one has ever suggested that my political decisions might be influenced by a toothache." "Maybe they should have," Linda suggested. The king's laughter grew louder. "Very well, human dentist. You may examine my mouth. But if you're wrong, the consequences will be severe. And if I'm right, then we'll discuss terms." What followed was the strangest dental examination of Linda's career. She had the Dragon King sit in a chair that was quickly brought into the throne room, while dozens of dragon nobles watched in fascination. Using a small flashlight from her emergency kit, she peered into the mouth of one of the most powerful beings in existence. The problem was immediately obvious. The king had an abscessed molar that was so infected it was affecting the bone structure of his jaw. The pain must have been excruciating. "Your Majesty," Linda said gently, "when did this pain start?" 6 weeks ago, the king admitted. "But dragon kings don't show weakness. Dragon kings also don't make good decisions when they're suffering from severe infections," Linda pointed out. "This abscess is serious. It could kill you if left untreated." She spent the next hour performing emergency drainage on the king's infected tooth, right there in the throne room. Dragon nobles who had ruled for centuries watched in amazement as a human woman with simple tools relieved their king's pain for the first time in weeks. When she was finished, King Stefan sat up slowly and worked his jaw experimentally. For the first time since Linda had met him, his expression was clear and pain-free. "Remarkable," he said quietly. "I had forgotten what it felt like to think without pain." "You'll need proper extraction and antibiotics," Linda continued. "But the immediate crisis is over." The king looked at her with new respect. "You have rendered a service to the crown that our own healers could not provide. Name your reward." Linda glanced at Aldrich, who was watching the proceedings with amazement. "I want safe passage for both of us whenever we choose to leave. And I want your word that Aldrich's choices will be respected, even if you don't agree with them." "Granted," the king said immediately. Then he paused. "But I have a counter-proposal." Linda waited. "Remain here as royal dentist. Dragons across the realm suffer from dental problems that our healers don't understand. You could save lives and advance the health of our people." It was tempting, but Linda shook her head. "I appreciate the offer, Your Majesty, but I have a different idea." 6 months later, Linda stood in the newly renovated clinic that bridged the human and dragon realms. The portal chamber had been expanded and equipped with state-of-the-art dental equipment. Dragons could now receive proper dental care without risking exposure in the human world. The waiting room was unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Dragon patients in human form sat next to actual dragons reading magazines and munching on donuts from Miller's Donuts, which now had a thriving interdimensional delivery service. Dr. Hayes, her assistant, called from the reception desk. "Your 3 o'clock is here." Linda looked up from her notes to see a young dragon in human form nervously eyeing the box of donuts on the counter. "First time?" she asked kindly. The dragon nodded. "I've heard you're the one who saved the king." "I just fixed his tooth," Linda said. "Would you like a donut before we start? They help with anxiety." As the young dragon bit into a glazed donut with the same expression of bliss that Aldrich had shown months ago, Linda caught sight of her business partner through the window. Aldrich was in the garden behind the clinic in his true dragon form, carefully tending to the flower beds with claws that could have torn through steel. He'd kept his promise about renouncing the throne. His cousin Rachel had been crowned heir instead, and she was proving to be a much more progressive ruler than anyone had expected. The arranged marriage system was being reformed, and relations between the dragon clans had improved significantly. Aldrich had also kept his promise about buying Linda a new dental chair. Several new dental chairs, actually, along with equipment that combined human technology with dragon magic in ways that were revolutionizing both medical fields. But mostly, he'd kept his promise about friendship. That evening, as they walked to Miller's Donuts for their traditional coffee break, Linda reflected on how much her life had changed. She was now the only human member of the Dragon Dental Association. She had patients who could fly to their appointments, and her love life had become significantly more complicated since falling for someone who occasionally breathed fire. "Regrets?" Aldrich asked, as if reading her thoughts. Linda looked around at the hybrid world they'd created, where humans and dragons worked together, and the biggest medical breakthrough in centuries had come from the simple act of one dentist willing to help anyone in pain. "Not a single one," she said, and meant it. The only thing that remained unchanged was Aldrich's preference for donuts over coffee, which Linda was beginning to think might be the most sensible thing about dragon culture after all.